Hi, everyone. Welcome to Juntos with Cathy, our weekly Thursday show where we bring community leaders and partners in and have a little conversation with them, find out a little bit more about them, what they're doing here in the region to make it a better place, and how we work with them. Today, I am very excited because we have Michael Hasso, who is Assistant City Manager for the City of Sacramento. And we're going to learn a little bit more about him and what's going on with the city. Welcome, Michael.
I'm glad to be here.
Good. It's so good to see you. And I know we're still doing this virtual world, so we really appreciate you taking time to come on a Thursday to talk to us.
No, my pleasure. Thank
Michael,
you.
I'm going to start a little bit with your background. So I understand that before you came to Sacramento, you were actually in Chicago.
That's correct.
Is that where you grew up?
That is where I was born and grew up, yes.
So what made you decide to take the leap from Chicago and to come over to Sacramento?
Well, so I'm a native Chicagoan, and I've that's where most of my family is. That being said, I've had the opportunity, the good fortune, to live a fair number of places and work different places. I've worked and lived in D.C. for 9 years. I've lived overseas in the Middle East, and Sacramento was looking for assistant city manager, which was a title, candidly, that I was a little bit less familiar with because my background has all been in economic development, but this was also the opportunity to head up kind of the economic development efforts. Sacramento was appealing for a lot of fronts. It was a chance to experience and explore California in what I would argue is probably the best place to be in California. So to learn California. Also, I was very enthused by the opportunities I had to speak with the mayor, with the city manager about where Sacramento was going. Sacramento's in a very interesting position right now in its development and future. It's at a point of transition. It's growing. It's part of a diverse economy, at the most diverse economy, one of the largest economy in the world. And so it was a great opportunity. And I've only found that since I've been here, that's been, exemplified through the people I've met, through you, the many organizations, our diverse community, and the many exciting things that are going on and are possible in Sacramento. So it was really a great move.
Well, we're glad that you made the leap to come over here to Sacramento. There's something you just said in there, though, that I want to touch upon. And that's what you said when you were looking at this position, assistant city manager, it was different in the type of role that you originally had, when you were in all these different places. So how did you know, seeing this, this is something I want to do? Were you always involved, city type government? And how does someone get to this type of position is basically what I'm trying to get at. Because I think when we're in elementary school and junior high and I'm going to grow up to be this, you might say I'm going to become mayor, but you might not necessarily say I'm going to be part of the city, team. And actually a lot happens in these groups and teams that are, actually part of the city government. So I think, can you share a little bit about how that happened?
Sure. Well, I have spent a lot of time in government. I haven't only been in government. I did a short stint with Citibank through City Community Capital, but I've worked for the city of Washington, D.C. I've worked for the city of Chicago 2 times with the city of Chicago, and I've worked up heading the Bureau of Economic Development for Cook County. And for those of you that don't know where Cook County is where Chicago is. It's the second most populous county in the United States after Los Angeles, with a population of about 5.3 million.
Wow.
So I headed up economic development for Cook County. And so in that sense, the role that I'm playing right now was not new. When I was with Cook County, I headed up a number of departments kind of directly, and economic development was one of those directly. But this title of assistant city manager, because I hadn't worked in a city manager form of government, which is what we have here in Sacramento. It's fairly common across the country. If you look at the top 100 largest cities, it's kind of evenly split between city manager and mayor form of government, mayor council form of government. So it was an opportunity to explore this different form of government where you have a city manager that kind of works for the entirety of the city council and the mayor to implement their policy directions. It's also a chance for us to support their policy directions by helping inform them. So it was a unique opportunity. So that's what I meant, that it was new. But fundamentally, the work I'm doing is not new. It's just new under that title of assistant city manager.
Great. And so when you say that you came in to help with economic development, and this is really your background, what does that mean? For a layperson, when you hear someone say, "I'm here to really help drive the economic development of the city or the region," what does that really mean? Like on a day-to-day basis, what does that mean for you?
So it fundamentally means about what we do as government as one partner in the economy. You have the private sector, you have not-for-profits, you have philanthropic institutions like foundations, you have our institutions of higher learning, trying to foster and grow opportunities that enrich and create opportunities for all our citizens on an equitable and inclusive basis. So fundamentally, my background, my undergraduate degree is in architecture. That's what I studied. And but at the end of the day, what I came to realize about myself is that I love cities, and I love what happens in cities. Cities are really unique places, and we can spend a lot of time talking about why cities matter here and always have, and into our future. But I was more concerned about what actually happens in the city. How do communities work together? How are opportunities created? How does job growth happen? What's the role of arts, culture, livable neighborhoods, thriving neighborhoods in that context? Than I was about design, which I care about. I think design, how our cities look, how we interact matters, but I was more fundamentally concerned about the people and their role in the cities than I was about just buildings per se. Mm-hmm. So I started in a career that one step led to another. So you asked, how did I get here? Yeah. Sometimes it's tough to answer because I have to reflect back on how I got here. But basically, I had a couple of different opportunities to work in cities in some critical areas for financing, development, and projects, all focused around job creation, job growth in Chicago and Washington, D.C., and bringing amenities and opportunities to residents and visitors alike. And so this opportunity afforded itself in Sacramento. I think Sacramento has tremendous assets in place, and it also has tremendous opportunities to grow and evolve. And I look forward to being able to play a part of that as a new Sacramentan, but someone who's proud to call myself a Sacramentan.
That's good to hear. Michael, for you to, as a Latino going through the ranks and getting to this type of position, did you have, mentors or people that, kind of assisted you to see this pathway?
Well, I think, so I like to start at home first. I think, the most important mentors and pathways that I had was my family and my parents. My dad was a machinist working for a can company in Chicago, had come to Chicago for industrial jobs like a lot of kind of Hispanics, particularly Mexican Americans, kind of that emigrated to industrial cities to work. My mom, her father was from Zacatecas, but she was born in Chicago, but then grew up there in her early years and teens. And I think, look, I'm the youngest of seven. And my parents were great in instilling in us the importance of education, the importance of aspiration, and the importance of dreaming. And so my father, the way he exemplified that and created my love for cities is my dad was great growing up in Chicago. He took us everywhere, the museums, the parks, the zoos, cultural institutions. And despite his job being, as a machinist, he really helped us explore the city. So I came to love cities and the complexity of them growing up because my father, and that obviously carried on. And my mom was always supportive of the importance of education. She always said, and this seems like a no-brainer for most, but I think for those of us that come from marginalized communities, particularly underserved communities, her one condition for 7 kids was that every one of us was going to graduate high school, because she didn't. She went back and got her degree through GED many years later, and then worked on, and was many years later, kind of after her passing, that I came to realize just how tough that was. Raising 7 kids, having them in school, and pursuing a GED herself. So those were the first mentors. And then I was just fortunate to have a lot of different role models, that have achieved success, and many of whom kind of were Latinos. I had including other family members. So here today, it's mentioned, my sister's a state's attorney. All of us got college degree. 4 of us, 7 of us have advanced degrees. So I think it's important, that nurturing environment. It's not just your family. It's being able to see role models. It's see role models that look like you, and how important that is to see that there are people, and then how we carry on. One of the things I'm committed to is, I come to Sacramento, and I see definitely a rich, diverse community. But how do we translate and grow that out of simply being diverse to also being inclusive and equitable, right? So that we don't see a community that's diverse when we're at festivals and the streets, but if I look in the boardroom, I see a community, kind of leadership that isn't diverse. How do we build that? And that takes everyone, and a belief that inclusion and diversity is important, not just because we want to reflect our community, but because it brings values and experience, et cetera, that add to the richness that then gets translated into how we think about business and opportunities.
I didn't know you came from a family of 7, so I'm really glad, you shared that. So I'm assuming that helps, build your confidence, right? Because everyone has to have that time in family where you get to talk, because there's so many of you.
Yeah, it does. It's hard to believe, now as I'm older, that I'm from a family of 7. I now have 14 nieces and nephews. So it does. And, I always joke, it's great to be from a family of 7. I'm not sure I would ever want to have a family of 7. But I really give credit to those, and in this specific case, my parents, because that was not an easy lift when you take into account everything they had to deal with, especially my dad coming in here, when he was early 20s from Mexico City to work and kind of build a family here in the U.S.
So the other thing that you've seen, comes from your own experience, the value of once you are able to access opportunities, how that really builds and expands your own life. So I can see now why this would be a path that you would take, and your passion you have, for economic development and making sure, the region is going to fulfill that. One of the projects that I know is being worked on in the city right now is Scale Up Sacramento. And I know that that's been the plan in place to really ensure exactly all the things you talked about. What is equitable, what is inclusive economy, and how are we all going to be a part of that? And I kind of want to bridge both of those, because what I really liked what you said about your family is similar to what we say at the chamber. When people ask me about our small businesses and why they're important, I always say, they're a part of the economic, fabric that's here. They're doing all that. And the reason is because at the core, all of them are trying to find better opportunities for their families, right? But it doesn't matter what level business they are. Every time I talk to someone, they're like, I'm trying to make sure better options, whether it's finishing high school, finishing college, getting them to purchase their first house. It's always about that. And I think that that's the first part of this inclusivity, right? Is finding what's a common bond of why we're all trying to reach economic prosperity. So can you talk a little bit about Scale Up Sacramento and what the hope for that plan is in rolling it out here in Sacramento?
Sure. So Scale Up at Sacramento was an economic opportunity growth agenda for the city that we developed with many stakeholders, including the Hispanic Chamber, many all our local and ethnic chambers, businesses across the region, and it's meant to be one piece of a larger equation of how do we grow our economy. Number one, how do we identify opportunities into the future, because we want small businesses, but we also want small businesses that are going to benefit from those growth industries that we think are not just the city's future, but in fact are the state's future and a nation's future, to be part of the economy. It's no longer about thinking about growth here, but here's what we do for our small business in our underserved communities, et cetera. We need to really be thinking about how do we collectively bring everyone along so that there are opportunities for good future paying jobs. And that means we still keep the importance of small businesses that are located in our corridors, that are serving our neighborhoods, but we also grow small businesses that are part of the economy, whether that's in clean technology, whether that's in life sciences, whether that's in e-mobility. And make Sacramento a hub for those industries that are going to define the future of work. And I think that's important. So what we did with Scale Up was we first tried to make sure we got the economics right. Where are the growth potentials that we can take advantage of? And then and this is the next step where we're going to be actively very much engaging with our community, and we did it, is that how do we ensure that to the extent that we see opportunities in e-mobility, whether it's battery development, the componentry from e-mobility, that there are opportunities for entrepreneurs to grow businesses around that industry, for workforce to work in that industry and to grow it so that we become a central place in that industry, because we know that is the future. And so it's not to discount things that are important now. Government is a big part of Sacramento. We don't want to discount that, and it's important. But what are growth industries that allow for wealth creation as owners, kind of income creation as workers to all our communities, and particularly our communities of color. So Scale Up is an agenda to build off of. It heavily focuses on those things that are new opportunities. One of the areas we want to make sure that we haven't forgotten is those areas that have been continued opportunities, such as manufacturing, such as construction. You know, it's a huge issue here in Sacramento and across California of not having enough workforce, you know, kind of to literally be involved in construction and traditional trades, whether that's plumbing, electricity, electrical, electricians and others. These are all pathways that provide good career opportunities for our residents, and businesses alike. So it identifies the key areas for growth. It identifies a couple of opportunities where we may take those on, and then it calls on us to focus on how do we ensure that those opportunities, if they are created in an equitable way. Good example of this is the work that's going on in Aggie Square, which is going to be a critical hub. You know, that's a reality that the University of California, Davis is making in terms of life sciences, biosciences, co-location of those industries along with the medical center. But it's also going to open up pathways for entrepreneurs. And we hope that a lot of those pathways, if not most of those pathways, are for entrepreneurs that are for people of color to build on and create wealth. Some 40% of the anticipated jobs at Aggie Square are not going to require a university degree. That's not to say they don't require education, right? One of the things I always stress is that just because it doesn't require a university degree, and this goes true for construction or other kinds of technical work that doesn't require a degree, but it doesn't mean you don't have to be and try to be good at math or kind of other skills. So skills, but it really focuses on the skills versus the degrees itself. So it's one piece of building our economy. Another piece that's embedded in Scale Up, but we are dealing with it kind of down a different track, is the neighborhood development work we're doing, where we created our neighborhood development action teams who can focus on place-based development. How do we improve and revitalize our commercial corridors and the housing areas that are around them? How do we bring other institutions, there are many businesses that will only be in an Aggie Square or downtown, but there's lots of businesses that can be other places in our neighborhoods and do hiring from those communities. So it's a lot of work ahead. It's not going to turn around, or it's not going to transform Sacramento's economy overnight, but collectively, I think we can truly make transformational changes in a way that Sacramento can lead the nation in inclusivity, in focusing on equity, and driving real economic growth that can resonate with all our residents.
So, Michael, along with all of that, which is all fantastic, we know that there's been a lot of commitment and continued, outreach to the community to make sure that they're included in these growth opportunities and input and decision making as best as possible. One of the other things I just read in the B too, that housing, someone's home was, for someone who's selling their home, it's actually really wonderful, right? It's it's a seller's market and doing all that. But do you think that our housing is going to keep up with these growth opportunities? Because as you said, even the jobs that don't require necessarily a degree, but do require a skill set, you still need to get that in place. Is there going to be enough housing so we can keep really grow from within, so that our workforce can actually live here and take advantage of these jobs that are going to happen? Does the city have any idea of how
we are focused on housing, and so when you get into the housing affordability, right, you got a lot of different things that we all collectively have to consider. So if you're a homeowner or seeking to be a homeowner, there's the issue of how are you able to keep a home? And don't forget, for most Americans, home ownership is their number one pathway to wealth building. That's been the tradition, across the country, and that's still true. And it's even more true for community individuals of color, because in general, we collectively build wealth less through the stock market and other things, and more through the appreciation of our homes. So that having been said, it's also a regional problem, right? Which is that we can't solve. Sacramento isn't a bubble. We don't exist, separated from everything else, unless collectively we solve for affordable housing being available across the region. Sacramento will always be pressed. So a couple of things we're working on. We were the first city in California that went to zero impact fees for affordable housing across the city. And that's pretty big, because don't forget, there are a lot of things that contribute to the cost of building new housing, whether it's rental, whether it's ownership. One of those is literally just the cost of going through the regulatory environment, et cetera. So we're doing a couple of things. We're also revisiting all the zoning along our retail corridors as an opportunity to rethink housing on those corridors, because we also know we have to rethink kind of retail on those corridors.
Yes.
People shop differently today. If we had any doubt about that, the pandemic certainly made that clear, right? Because retail sales have done tremendous during the pandemic, in spite of the fact that there are very few people that were able to, relatively speaking, go and shop in stores. So the nature of retailing is changing. So we are also recently took a step, at least through the city council, of introducing the concept of the elimination of single-family zoning, which to a large degree has driven some of the disparities we see between homeownership, for particularly between Caucasian communities and our communities of color in terms of home ownership. So we're looking at the potential elimination of single-family zoning. That's not to suggest that I'm going to have a 10-story building abutting, kind of this house right here, but it's that it's not going to be the driving factor in how we look at development. That it's a single family house on a single lot, that there is an opportunity to do duplexes, triplexes, and quads, as well as other kinds of things. We've also done tremendous changes looking at accessory dwelling units and trying to produce more of those. The mayor took a great step with council support of the establishment of an affordable housing trust to promote more affordable housing. But how do you get more people secure in their housing? It's a couple of ways. One is, in general, we got to build more housing. Specifically, we have to build more affordable housing at all spectrum, for lowest income, but also our workforce. And then the third piece of this is that we have to raise people's wages, right? Because that's the other way. You have to do all those things simultaneously. We have to create higher paying jobs for more people and wealth building, so that they can afford to whether it's rent or purchase homes. And there's various programs we're looking at, whether those are rental assistance program is a good one, for instance, that SHRA is launching, providing more infrastructure for infill housing throughout the city, creating resources, making it easier to build in Sacramento. I've said one of the things I want Sacramento to be is the most responsibly development-friendly city in California, and for the rest of California, and indeed the rest of the country, to know that, because there's lots of reasons to still want to be in California, whether you're here or looking from the outside. But it's important. It doesn't matter if we don't make sure that others know that. But as we get that story out, we want them to think is your first point to look at should be Sacramento.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that, because it's something that's a common theme as we're going through, and I'm all wondering, is everything going to catch up in time for there still to be, those opportunities, for home ownership and to have those pieces. Is there anything that, in your trajectory, different places that you've been at that really stood out as like, wow, that was like an amazing project that could be implemented, here in Sacramento too, that, would fit, that you thought you were going to bring over this way too?
Well, things I want to focus on. So clearly, strengthening our neighborhoods and those corridors is important. Investment in those areas, and doing it in a way that does not encourage displacement, but allows for home ownership and wealth creation for those individuals that are already there, right? So that's one piece. Two is, and I think this is where we as a city can learn, is how do we view the city and its assets. And we started down that pathway prior to the pandemic, which is rethinking our waterways, both the Sacramento River and the American River, and what those waterways are and how they're assets that have been underutilized from a standpoint, not just of visitors, right, who come here and we say, hey, we have beautiful rivers and beautiful waterfronts, and how do we encourage people to take advantage of it, but our residents of like. I don't want Sacramento to ever be in the same kind of situation where, the example I always give is in Chicago, and it's a city I love that has done tremendous things, but let me tell you one example of inequity here is you can have kids who grew up in the city who live 2 miles from the lake, one of the largest bodies of fresh water in the world, and who have never been to the lake.
Really?
Right? Kind of like they've lived in the city their whole life and they've never been to the lake. Sacramento should never, the waterfronts define great cities all over the world. Our challenge is to develop those waterfronts in a way that they are amenities for residents and visitors alike, and they are truly the place where the city comes together, whether that's downtown or other place on the waterfront. So building on assets, I think, is very important. Realizing that, we have tremendous opportunities to grow our arts and cultural institutions, and think about it not just the way from the standpoint of amenity, what I call big art, whether that's Crocker or other things, but down to the neighborhoods. Promoting art, the presence of art, and the activities of art and culture in all our neighborhoods. And we're really fortunate that we brought on a new creative economy manager, Megan Van Voorhis, who came to us from Cleveland, who's working very much with the Arts Commission and the community to try to think about the importance of art, culture, institutions in our neighborhoods, but also as part of our economy. So there are a lot of growth areas. We could probably say you've been in a front row seat in the Hispanic Chamber, a lot of the work that we're doing internally with the city. And the final piece, though, I do want to stress is that it's important for the city to lead and be there, but it's also important for the city to realize that it is not the solo actor, and it should not endeavor to own everything and every effort. Our role is to help empower our neighborhoods, our communities, our residents, and businesses to grow organically on their own. And our role is to create that environment in which they can do that, in fact, flourish. And particularly all our communities of color and our underserved communities. And from my own kind of perspective, particularly our kind of Latino communities. Because we are a big part of the future and we're certainly a big part of the history of this community.
Michael, I wish we had so much more time. As I told you before we started, the time always goes by so fast.
It does.
But what I really appreciate about you is just how much knowledge and expertise you brought to Sacramento, and also how you just embrace Sacramento. And, really, like you said, you're a Sacramentan, you've made it your own and really looked at the assets that we have here and, really how to elevate them and how to really make sure that there is going to be, when we say inclusive economy, that it really is, reaching out to everyone. And so I hope that everyone that was listening today, really got that from you, because I know I've seen that from getting that, as you said, the front row seat and having the opportunity to work with you. But there's so much that, you're doing behind the scenes at the city to really make sure that the taglines, as sometimes I call them, that are out there are actually, that there's work behind them to make sure it happens.
Right. So, well, I feel fortunate to work both with the Chamber and your leadership at the Chamber, and look forward to our continued work.
Great. Me too. And so, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I think everyone else has appreciated it. I hope you'll come back. I'd like to, we'd like to have some updates, as things progress. And, especially, regarding, we briefly touched on Aggie Square, but there's a lot of other bigger projects, with the California Mobility Center that we know you're involved in. So we'd love to have you back. So you have an open invitation to tell us more about how the city's having an impact and how our neighborhoods are benefiting from that. So thank you for having me, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, who joined us today. Today we had Michael Hasso, Assistant City Manager from the City of Sacramento. I want to let you know that next Thursday, April 1st, no April Fools, but we are going to take a hiatus. And the reason is that next week we are celebrating Salud, our annual awards celebration of small businesses. And so on Wednesday, you can expect a sneak preview from leadership talking about the past year and then showing what will be a televised event on Telemundo 33. For the first time ever, they're going to have a bilingual show on April 3rd at 6 o'clock where everyone can enjoy getting to know our small businesses that we are awarding this year. So look for those information to come, look for details on our social media, and make sure that you gather your family and friends that live in your household to watch the show. So until next time, thank you so much for joining us for Juntos with Cathy, and have a great day.